Stand still, peasant. I want to see how disgusting someone like you looks dripping in Chateau Margaux, 1995. Blake Whitmore IV sneered as he raised the crystal goblet over Amara Jackson's head. The 14-year-old's smirk widened as $3,000 worth of vintage wine cascaded down her face, soaking through her simple black waitress uniform, dripping onto Italian marble while 200 guests in the Four Seasons Boston Grand Ballroom gasped in collective horror. Catherine Whitmore squealed with delight like her son had just scored the winning touchdown at his prep school. "Perfect, darling! She matches the decor now, doesn't she?" she crowed, frantically filming on her iPhone, zooming in on Amara's wine-drenched braids, posting it live to Instagram with laughing emojis. Richard Whitmore sauntered over, 52 years of inherited wealth evident in every calculated step, Rolex presidential glinting under chandeliers, eyes dead and cold as a shark's. "Clean that up quickly," he murmured to nobody in particular, gesturing at the wine pooling on marble floors that cost more than most people's houses. "This ballroom wasn't designed for your kind to make messes." His emphasis on those last two words made several nearby guests shift uncomfortably, but nobody spoke up because the Whitmores owned half of Boston and could destroy careers with a single phone call. Amara didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't cry, didn't give them the satisfaction. And none of them, not Blake with his prep school entitlement, not Catherine with her phone still recording, not Richard with his casual cruelty, not the 200 frozen guests, understood they had just humiliated the one woman in that ballroom who held the heart of the man capable of annihilating their $850 million empire with 3 words. The man who was, at that exact moment, walking through the ballroom entrance 30 feet away. Before we continue, can I ask you a question? Where in the world are you watching from? Comment below because we'd love to know how far these stories travel. And hit that subscribe button because what happens next will shatter everything you think you know about power. Kang Min-suk had arrived at the Whitmore Foundation annual gala exactly on schedule, 7:15 p.m., flanked by his assistant, 2 translators, and private security. At 35 years old, he was the kind of man who commanded silence simply by entering a room. CEO of Vanguard Technologies, worth $14 billion, responsible for half of South Korea's tech infrastructure. He'd flown from Seoul specifically for this evening, specifically to sign the partnership agreement that would bring Vanguard's revolutionary AI systems to American markets through Whitmore Industries. $850 million, the biggest deal of the quarter. His board had been preparing for 6 months. But the moment he stepped into that ballroom, the moment his dark eyes scanned the crowd and landed on the wine-soaked woman standing frozen near the service entrance, the moment he saw her face, everything else ceased to exist. The contracts, the deal, the $850 million, all of it became meaningless static compared to the thunderbolt of recognition that stopped his heart mid-beat. Amara. It was Amara, the woman he'd been searching for across 3 continents for 5 years, the woman who disappeared from his Seoul penthouse without explanation, without goodbye, without trace, the woman who haunted every quiet moment, the housekeeper he'd fallen in love with, the person he'd hired private investigators in 12 countries to find. And she was here in Boston, working as a waitress, and someone had just poured wine on her like she was garbage. Min-suk's jaw clenched. His hands, usually so controlled, so steady when signing billion-dollar contracts, curled into fists. His head of security noticed the change immediately, stepped closer, concerned. "Sir." Min-suk didn't respond. He was watching Richard Whitmore laugh, watching Catherine Whitmore film, watching Blake Whitmore high-five his prep school friends, watching the event coordinator rush over to Amara, already apologizing to the Whitmores, already promising to fire her immediately. Watching Amara stand there with quiet dignity, refusing to cry, refusing to give them the satisfaction, exactly like she'd always been, strong even when the world tried to break her. The translator touched his arm. "Mr. Kang, the contracts are ready in the executive suite. Mr. Whitmore is waiting to—" But Min-suk was already moving, walking with purpose across that marble floor. Guests parted instinctively, sensing something was about to happen. Richard Whitmore noticed him approaching, plastic smile activating like a switch. "Mr. Kang, welcome, welcome. So wonderful to finally meet in person. The contracts are upstairs and ready for signatures. We're so excited about this partnership. Vanguard and Whitmore are going to revolutionize." But Min-suk walked past him like he didn't exist, walked straight to Amara, who was standing at the service entrance, shoulders squared, preparing to leave with whatever dignity she had left. He stopped 3 feet away, close enough that she'd hear him, far enough that he wouldn't crowd her.
Amara. He said her name for the first time in 5 years, just her name, but it carried the weight of 60 months of searching, 60 months of wondering, 60 months of unanswered questions. She froze. Her shoulders went rigid. For 3 full seconds, she didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't turn around. Then, slowly, like she was afraid he'd disappear if she moved too fast, she turned. Her face, still dripping wine, showed everything at once. Shock, fear, pain, love she'd tried to bury, panic, recognition, and underneath it all, exhaustion. The exhaustion of someone who'd been running for 5 years and just got caught. Min-suk. She whispered his name like a prayer and a curse mixed together. Richard Whitmore was suddenly at Min-suk's elbow, confused, slightly annoyed. "Mr. Kang, I don't understand. Do you know this woman? She's just a waitress. She had an accident with the wine. We're handling it. There's no need for you to—" Catherine joined him, phone still in hand, still filming everything because content was content, and this was getting interesting. "Is there a problem? We can have her removed if she's bothering you. We have very strict policies about staff interactions with guests." Blake was watching too, slightly nervous now because the Korean billionaire everyone had been talking about all week was staring at the waitress he'd just humiliated, and nobody understood why. Min-suk finally looked at Richard Whitmore, looked at him the way you'd look at something stuck to your shoe. "Are you hurt?" he asked Amara, ignoring the Whitmores completely. She shook her head, mute, still too shocked to form words. He reached out slowly, carefully, pulled his pocket square from his suit jacket, a square of silk that probably cost more than her week's wages, and gently wiped wine from her cheek. The gesture was so tender, so intimate, that whispers exploded across the ballroom like wildfire. Min-suk turned to Richard Whitmore. "The deal is canceled." Silence. Complete, total, suffocating silence. 200 guests frozen. Orchestra stopped mid-note. Even the chandeliers seemed to stop swaying. Richard blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" His voice had lost all its smoothness, all its practiced charm. "What did you say?" "The deal is canceled." Min-suk's voice was ice, controlled, absolute. Vanguard Technologies will not be entering into any partnership with Whitmore Industries. The $850 million strategic agreement is terminated, effective immediately. "Mr. Kang," Richard's voice was rising now, panic creeping in. "Surely there's been a misunderstanding. We can discuss—" Catherine was sputtering. "Over a clumsy waitress? This is absurd. She's just staff. You can't be serious." Blake was looking between his parents and the Korean billionaire, starting to realize he'd done something very, very wrong. "Your son," Min-suk said quietly, dangerous quiet, the kind of quiet that comes before an explosion, assaulted this woman, poured wine on her, humiliated her for your entertainment. You filmed it. You laughed. You called her disgusting. You told her she didn't belong here. And you're right. She doesn't belong here. Because this— He gestured at the opulent ballroom, the designer gowns, the fake charity gala that was really just a tax write-off and networking opportunity. This is not where good people waste their time. Richard was red-faced now. "She's a waitress! This is insane! You're throwing away $850 million over some nobody—" But Min-suk cut him off with a look that could freeze lava. "She is not nobody, and you," he looked at all 3 Whitmores, "are exactly the kind of people I don't do business with." He turned to his assistant. "Prepare the jet. We're leaving tonight." To his lawyers. "Draw up the termination paperwork. Include the penalty clauses. They'll be paying for breach of good faith negotiations." To his security. "Escort the Whitmores away from Miss Jackson. Now." "Wait!" Everyone turned. Amara had spoken. She was looking at Min-suk with tears streaming down her face, mixing with the wine. "I can't go with you." Min-suk's expression cracked, just for a second, showing the pain underneath. Amara, please, I've been searching for 5 years. We need to talk. But she was shaking her head. You don't understand. I can't just leave. Her voice broke. I have responsibilities. People depending on me. I can't. She turned to go, and he caught her wrist gently. Not restraining, just connecting. Please don't run again. Whatever I did to make you leave, whatever happened, I'm sorry. Just tell me. Let me fix it. But she pulled away, face showing agony. You can't fix it. Nobody can. I left because I had to. Because your mother made it clear I'd never be good enough. Because I was your housekeeper, and you're a billionaire, and that math doesn't work. Because I got pregnant, and I couldn't trap you. Because loving you was going to destroy both of us, and I chose to leave before it did. The ballroom had gone silent again, but for completely different reasons now. This wasn't a business deal collapsing. This was a love story unraveling in public. Min-suk was staring at her. Pregnant? His voice barely above a whisper. You were pregnant? You left because you were pregnant with my child? Children. Amara's voice was so quiet people in the back couldn't hear. Not child. Children. Triplets. I found out 2 weeks after your mother paid me to leave Seoul. 2 weeks after she told me I was ruining your life. I was having triplets, and I wouldn't trap you like that.
Min-suk looked like he'd been shot. His face went white. His hands started trembling. Where are they? Where are my children? Amara's tears were falling freely now. Here. They're here. At the gala. In the side room with the other staff children. They're 4.5 years old. Their names are Mia, Noah, and Elijah. And they have your eyes. Show me. It wasn't a request. It was a plea from a man who just found out he'd lost 5 years of his children's lives. Please, Amara, show me my children. She nodded, unable to speak, and started walking toward the side room. Min-suk followed, and behind them, Richard Whitmore made the stupidest decision of his life. This is ridiculous. You're canceling our deal over some gold-digging waitress who claims she has your babies? This is the oldest con in the... He didn't get to finish because Min-suk had turned back, climbed the 3 steps to the gala stage where the podium and microphone stood, where Richard had been planning to give a speech thanking everyone for their donations to his fake charity. Ladies and gentlemen, Min-suk's voice cut through the ballroom like a blade, amplified by the sound system. If I could have your attention. Every eye was already on him, but the room somehow got even quieter. My name is Kang Min-suk. I am the CEO of Vanguard Technologies. I came here tonight to finalize an $850 million partnership with Whitmore Industries. Instead, I witnessed a 14-year-old boy, he pointed at Blake, assault a woman by pouring wine on her. I watched his parents, he pointed at Richard and Catherine, film it and laugh. I heard them call her disgusting, tell her she didn't belong, make it clear they considered her less than human. He paused. That woman is Amara Jackson. 5 years ago, she worked in my home in Seoul. We fell in love. She left, and I've spent 5 years searching for her. Tonight, I found her, working as a waitress at this gala. And I also found out that I am the father of her 3 children. Children I didn't know existed because my family, like the Whitmores, believed she wasn't good enough, that class and wealth matter more than love and character. The ballroom was riveted. Phones were up. People were recording. This was going to be on social media in minutes, news networks by morning. So let me be very clear, Min-suk continued. The deal with Whitmore Industries is permanently canceled. My lawyers will be pursuing damages for the time Vanguard wasted on these negotiations. And more importantly, to everyone in this room, to everyone who will see this video online, let this be a lesson. Your money means nothing if you use it to humiliate people. Your power means nothing if you use it to hurt those with less. The Whitmores thought they were untouchable. They thought they could treat people like garbage and face no consequences. They were wrong. He looked directly at Amara, still standing near the stage, crying. Some people are worth more than $850 million. Some people are worth more than any amount of money. And if you can't see that, then you're not worth doing business with. He stepped off the stage, walked to Amara, took her hand. "Show me our children." She led him to the side room. Inside, 3 4-and-a-half-year-old children were sitting on chairs, coloring, waiting for their mama to finish work. A little girl with Amara's face and Minsok's eyes looked up first. "Mama, why are you all wet?" 2 little boys, identical twins, turned at the sound. "Mama, are you okay?" Then all 3 noticed the tall Korean man standing behind their mother, staring at them like they were miracles he couldn't quite believe were real. Minsok dropped to his knees. He didn't trust his legs to hold him anymore. Tears were streaming down his face. He'd cried maybe 3 times in his adult life. Twice at his father's funeral, once when Amara disappeared. And now he was sobbing in front of 3 children who didn't know he was their father. "Mama," the little girl Mia asked uncertainly, "why is that man crying?" Amara knelt beside Minsok, put her hand on his shoulder. "Babies," she said softly, This is someone very important. This is," she took a shaking breath, "this is your Appa, your father." 3 pairs of identical dark eyes went wide. The twins looked at each other. Mia looked at Minsok. "We have an Appa?" Her voice was so small, so hopeful, it broke something in Minsok's chest. "Yes," he managed to say. "You have an Appa, and I—" His voice cracked. "I am so sorry I wasn't here. I didn't know. If I'd known, I would have been here every single day." Mia, cautious but curious, stepped closer, touched his face. "You're really our Appa? Really, really?" "Really, really," Minsok whispered. One of the twins, Noah, asked, "Are you going to leave like the other kids' daddies do? Because Mama said some daddies leave and that's why we don't have one." Minsok looked at Amara, saw the pain in her face, saw 5 years of explaining to 3 children why they didn't have a father. "I'm never leaving," he said firmly. "Never. I promise." The other twin, Elijah, practical even at 4, asked, "Do you know how to make pancakes? Because Mama makes good pancakes, but maybe you make better ones." Minsok laughed through his tears. "I'll learn. I'll learn everything you like." And then all 3 children, making the simultaneous decision that only children can make, decided this crying man was theirs and climbed onto him in a puppy hive of hugs.
Behind them, through the open door, the Whitmores were being escorted out by security. Richard screaming about lawyers and lawsuits, Catherine filming everything for her social media, Blake looking shell-shocked. None of it mattered, because in that side room, a family that had been broken for 5 years was putting itself back together. The next morning, Boston woke up to a viral video. 20 million views in 12 hours. Kang Min-sok's speech from the stage, his cancellation of the $850 million deal, his declaration that some people were worth more than any amount of money. The business world went insane. Whitmore Industries stock crashed, dropped 60% before trading was suspended. Major partners started terminating contracts. Richard's phone was ringing non-stop with panicked board members. Catherine's social media, where she'd posted the video of Blake pouring wine on Amara, was flooded with comments calling her disgusting, racist, cruel. People were finding Blake's prep school Instagram, discovering this wasn't his first incident, just the first one that got filmed and went viral. Someone dug up 8 previous assault complaints against Blake, all covered up with Whitmore money, all victims paid off and silenced. Somebody else found financial records showing $400 million in offshore accounts, tax evasion on a massive scale, the Whitmore Foundation proven as a money laundering front. The Massachusetts Attorney General opened an investigation by noon. But the Whitmores weren't going down quietly. By afternoon, they'd filed a $100 million defamation lawsuit against Amara, claiming she was a gold digger, that she'd fabricated the relationship, that the children probably weren't even Min-sok's, that this was all an elaborate con. Catherine went on Boston News, crying fake tears, claiming her son was the real victim, that Amara had provoked him, that the wine incident was an accident, blown out of proportion. Richard's lawyers issued a statement saying Min-sok had been manipulated, that Vanguard would regret this decision, that Whitmore Industries would pursue all legal remedies. They hired a PR firm to flood social media with bots claiming Amara was a liar. They pressured her landlord to evict her. They got her other job to fire her. They called CPS with false allegations about her parenting. They went to war. If you believe that money can't buy decency, that power should be used to protect instead of destroy, stay with me, Because what happens next proves that truth is patient, but it never loses. The Whitmores wanted war, but they forgot that you cannot throw stones at someone while you live in a glass house. And behind the scenes, all of their crimes and victims were waiting patiently. Grace Chen had been watching from the shadows that night at the gala. 73 years old, retired from the Whitmores 2 years earlier after 27 years of service, she'd only come because her niece was working the event and needed a ride home. She'd been standing near the service entrance when Blake poured that wine, watched Amara stand there with dignity she recognized, the same dignity Grace herself had maintained through decades of Whitmore cruelty. Watched the Korean billionaire cancel the deal, watched him take Amara's hand, watched him discover his children. And Grace had thought, finally, someone with power who isn't afraid to use it right. She'd gone home that night, pulled out the 3 boxes she'd kept hidden in her attic for years. 27 years of evidence. Every racist comment recorded on the phone she'd kept in her apron pocket. Every shorted paycheck photographed. Every harassment complaint she'd witnessed the Whitmores cover up. She'd kept it all, because she'd known someday someone would need it. Someone would be brave enough to stand against them. She just hadn't known who. 2 days after the gala, she'd shown up at Minsok's hotel with those boxes. Told him and Amara everything. Showed them the evidence that would bury the Whitmores forever. And when Amara asked her why risk everything to help strangers, Grace had smiled sadly and said, "Because I watched them destroy good people for 27 years. I watched and did nothing because I was afraid. I'm not afraid anymore, and neither are you." At midnight on the 3rd day after the gala, a website went live. It was called The Whitmore Files, and it contained 27 years of meticulously documented evidence compiled by Grace Chen, the Whitmores' former head housekeeper who'd worked for them for nearly 3 decades. Grace had kept everything. Every racist comment recorded on her phone, every shorted paycheck photographed, every sexual harassment complaint the Whitmores had covered up, 17 women paid off and silenced. Every one of Blake's 8 previous assault incidents documented with police reports that had mysteriously disappeared after Whitmore lawyers made calls. Financial records showing $400 million in offshore accounts, tax evasion on a massive scale, the Whitmore Foundation proven as a money laundering front, audio recordings of Richard bribing judges, evidence of blacklisting anyone who crossed them, documentation of wage theft affecting 200 domestic workers over 2 decades. It was all there. Every crime, every lie, every victim. Organized by year, verified by lawyers, ready for federal prosecution. The website crashed from traffic within an hour. 10 million views, then 30 million, then 50. News networks picked it up. FBI opened an investigation before sunrise. At 6 a.m., federal agents raided Whitmore Industries' headquarters and the family mansion. Richard and Catherine were arrested at their breakfast table, Blake watching as his parents were handcuffed and read their rights. Conspiracy, fraud, tax evasion, money laundering, witness tampering, obstruction of justice. The charges kept coming. Catherine screamed at the agents that this was all because of that black woman, that Amara Jackson had orchestrated this whole thing, that it was a setup. Her screaming was caught on body camera footage. The video went viral. Public opinion, which had been split, turned completely against the Whitmores. Nobody defended them anymore. The trial lasted 4 months. Richard got 15 years in federal prison and cried like a baby. Catherine got 12 and messed up her pants. Blake, as a minor, couldn't be imprisoned, but was ordered into intensive therapy and 500 hours of community service, specifically working with domestic workers' advocacy groups so he could learn what his family had done to people like them. Whitmore Industries was dissolved. Assets liquidated. The $400 million in offshore accounts was recovered and distributed to victims. The Whitmore Foundation was shut down, its buildings sold, the money given to real charities. The prep school expelled Blake. Their country club revoked their membership. Boston society, which had bowed to them for decades, erased them like they'd never existed. 6 months after the gala, Minsok and Amara stood in a small church in Boston with 3 4.5-year-old children serving as flower girls and ring bearers. It wasn't a big wedding, just close friends. Grace Chen in the front row, Min-Sok's mother, who'd flown from Seoul to apologize to Amara publicly, who'd gotten down on her knees in front of her grandchildren and begged forgiveness for the 5 years she'd stolen from all of them. The wedding was simple. Amara wore a dress she'd picked herself, not a designer gown. Min-Sok wore a suit, but no tie, because Elijah had informed him ties were uncomfortable, and Abbas shouldn't be uncomfortable on important days. They said their vows. Mia cried happy tears. Noah announced loudly that now they were a real family like in the movies. Elijah asked if this meant they'd get pancakes every day. Everyone laughed. It was perfect. 1 year after that, almost exactly 2 years after Blake Whitmore poured wine on Amara Jackson at a gala, the Grace Chen Protection Institute opened its doors in downtown Boston. $100 million in funding from Vanguard Technologies. Grace Chen is executive director. Mission statement: protect domestic workers from abuse, expose employer corruption, provide legal defense for whistleblowers, ensure no one else suffered what Grace and Amara and 200 others had suffered under the Whitmores. In its first year, the Institute helped 500 workers, recovered $3 million in stolen wages, got 19 abusive employers prosecuted, pushed through new Massachusetts laws protecting domestic workers' rights. Grace Chen became one of the most powerful advocates in America. She testified before Congress. She was on magazine covers. But she never forgot where it started, with a 14-year-old boy pouring wine on a waitress and a Korean billionaire who knew that some things mattered more than $850 million. The Institute's first annual fundraiser was held at the Four Seasons Boston, same ballroom where everything had begun. This time, Amara walked in wearing a beautiful gown, Min-Sok beside her, 3 5-year-olds in fancy clothes holding their parents' hands. Grace Chen honored at the head table. The event raised $10 million. During her speech, Amara stood at the podium where Min-Sok had canceled the Whitmore deal and said, "2 years ago in this room, a child poured wine on my head. His parents laughed. They filmed it. They called me disgusting. And I thought that's just how the world works. The powerful crush the powerless, and we accept it because we have no choice." She paused. But then, someone showed me that power can be used differently. That one person refusing to accept injustice can change everything. That love matters more than money. That dignity matters more than deals. To everyone who's been poured on, talked down to, treated as less than human, your worth is not determined by who looks down on you. You are not defined by who underestimates you. And to those who think wealth makes them untouchable, who think they can abuse people without consequences, let the Whitmores be your lesson. Truth is patient. Justice takes time. But it always, eventually, arrives. She stepped away from the podium. Min-Sok was waiting with their children. Mia asked why Mama was crying if this was a happy party. Amara laughed, scooped her up. "These are happy tears, baby. Happy tears." They left the gala as a family, walked out into a Boston night that felt different than it had 2 years ago. Lighter somehow. Like something heavy had been lifted. Like justice, delayed but delivered, had changed the air itself. Behind them, in that ballroom, 500 people stood and applauded. For Grace Chen and her 27 years of careful documentation. For Min-Sok and his willingness to walk away from $850 million. For Amara and her quiet dignity in the face of cruelty. For 3 children who'd gotten their father back. And for the truth that had been patient and had, in the end, won. The Whitmore empire had fallen. The Grace Chen Institute would help thousands, and a family that had been broken by fear and class and cruelty had been remade by love and courage and the simple refusal to accept injustice. Sometimes the powerful learn that their power has limits. Sometimes a 14-year-old's cruelty becomes the catalyst that destroys a dynasty. Sometimes a Korean billionaire meets the woman he loves at the exact moment she needs him most. And sometimes, just sometimes, the world works the way it should, with the powerless becoming powerful, with truth defeating lies, with love winning over money, with 3 4-year-olds getting to know their appa, with a waitress who had wine poured on her head becoming the director of an institute that would protect thousands, with a boy who'd been taught cruelty learning, through consequences, that actions matter, and with a ballroom that had hosted humiliation becoming a place where justice was celebrated. Thank you for staying until the end. Do you think the Whitmores deserved what happened to them?
Tell me in the comments section below. And if this story moved you, if it made you think about how we treat people who serve us, about what real power looks like, watch the next video on my channel. More stories of people who refused to stay powerless. More truth that needs to be told. See you there.